Hi, welcome to episode 54 of the ChessTDD series. This episode, I am proud to say that it's not been too terribly long since the last one, so I kind of remembered where I was at, and things went pretty well. What I had left off doing last time was realizing that a lot of these constants that I had, all these board coordinate constants, didn't make sense once I refactored the castling status checker class to be mainly concerned with rows as opposed to discrete coordinates. And kind of toward the end there, what I realized too is that what was concerned with the discrete coordinates was the testing class. So what you're seeing here is I figured out that there was no reference to any of these constants any longer in the production class. So I just moved them all over to the test class, and now you're seeing the result of going through and doing this sort of laborious refactoring. This is the classic situation where I'm not sure if it would be quicker to automate, a find and replace kind of thing, or if it's better just to plow ahead manually. Opted for automation, didn't wind up regretting it. I think I didn't in the first place, thinking that, I don't remember exactly, but maybe that there were like instances of that and that I'd make things worse. It is certainly not beyond the pale for a well-intentioned find and place to leave things worse than when you started. If that hasn't ever happened to you when dealing with code, I envy you. So as long as I was in here, I decided, some of these, I think when I had defined several episodes back this constant scheme originally, I didn't go and retrofit it. So as long as I'm doing all this, I might as well go back and do the retrofitting too, to make everything kind of uniform here and always be speaking in terms of the coordinate locations by name rather than just by the numbers. When you go back and actually read the tests, it reads pretty well. This is starting to look almost like some of the acceptance tests, and that's always good. Definitely a lesson that you can take away is the importance of test readability. And I don't mean that even quite in the same way that we talk about code readability, where it's like code can read sort of like prose, especially domain code. But when it comes to tests, the more that you have it read like a specification or, requirements or whatever you want to call it, the better. This is really where you're documenting your code, at least where I do it. I tend not to like Word documents and other things that wind up lying, code comments. This never lies. If your unit tests get out of sync with your code, then things go red. You have a pretty early detection ability there. So this is all, now that I've got things in the right place from a constant perspective, this is all starting to look pretty good. You'll see I left if you notice that one last set of numbers was just because I was picking a random unoccupied square on the board, so I just left that. Now what I'm going to do is, in the same vein, just for the sake of completeness here, so to speak, I'm going to go and give these rows all names. Now, because of this giant font I use for recording, I think it's going to make these lines a little bit long. I don't really tend to worry about lines running long horizontally. Usually that makes people a little irate with me in collective code bases. I try to be mindful of other people. But I don't care about it, so it's sort of hard to make myself care about it. So I guess that's not too bad, even with this giant font. It doesn't really... So you see the indicator there. I don't know who paints that, if it's Visual Studio or Code Rush. If you see kind of over toward the right, like, this is the length beyond which the row should not go. And I think this is based on some pretty old tech when there was like a limit of like 80 characters or whatever it was. I can tell you that when that convention was adopted, there were not, 23-inch widescreen monitors that people were using, so I think maybe it's time to get with the times a little bit. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. If you like short, compact lines, so be it. So yeah, this isn't especially exciting, this part of the the video series, but, true to form, I'm capturing everything, and, a lot of times you're just kind of doing this, this type of cleanup that's not real interesting. You're not making tests pass or doing any kind of production debugging, or, whatever. It's just busy work in a sense, but not busy work enough that you can really automate it exactly. So just kind of keep things clean. I think of what I'm doing here is honestly like my version of documentation. I got the code working, and now I'm going to go back and make it so that you can read it pretty easily if you come along and happen into this code base. All right, so with that in place, now I want to move over this card. It's been in the back of my mind for the last several episodes that, hey, I think once we do this, we can get rid of all this awkward castling logic from king. Now, what's the best way to do this? Tough to say, but I thought I could start with writing some acceptance tests. Like, we've been in the weeds for a pretty long time here with the unit level tests on that new class. So let's write an acceptance test. And I was kind of checking in here and thinking, I don't think I ever wired this castling thing up anywhere. Like, it's just a free-floating independent class that's not integrated into anything. So what better way to force my hand to do it than to write an acceptance test that will fail? And that'll force me to declare the new, castling status checker. So you'll see here in a second what's happening. It's really, when you're... I've heard it described as outside in TDD versus inside out, or London versus some other city. I kind of forget which. I sort of bounce between the two as appropriate. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a improvisational with it. That makes it sound a lot grander than it is. Maybe the more accurate thing is making it up as I go. But in any case, I bounce back and forth between it sort of by feel. And I guess the guiding principle is I don't want to get too far from, business or domain value. I want to, it's really a pleasure to dive down into unit tests, because then you've got a class being instantiated, and, it's very quick and there's this fast feedback loop going. Whereas with acceptance tests, whether you're using SpecFlow or, the way historically I've done it a lot, which is just kind of with a console app or something like that, that's very end-to-end. There's a lot of stuff to wire together. So actually getting a test to where you want it takes some effort, which means that it's sort of refreshing to be down in at the unit level where everything happens pretty quickly and you can hum along. But if you don't come up for error from time to time, it gets easy to be sort of lost in the weeds and write all sorts of utility kind of classes or whatever. And you can get lost in the small and start to not realize that maybe you're not really driving as quickly as you could at delivering something. So that's really kind of my only guiding principle is, honestly, it sounds sort of ridiculous, but, I've been away from the big picture for too long. I got to get back here. Now, this is going as I expected, which is there is this king, and I think I'd gotten as far in king as to say, well, if the king is moved, then you can't castle. So if the king is moved, you'll get 5 moves there in the acceptance test scenario. If the king is not moved, you'll get 7. But what I did is I set up a board where the king should have 6 moves, so in no circumstance am I getting this right. So now I made all my grand plans. I got the test with the 6 moves, and I expected this to work, and it didn't, so I'm confused. Excuse me. Time to run the debugger and see what's happening. I'm a little embarrassed that I resorted to the debugger so quickly, but I don't remember exactly why I did that. A lot of times I kind of prefer to let the dots from that one test show me the way through. Oh, right. So the problem here was that, this was the very first test in the scenario running, so it's not even the test I'm interested in. This is not a red test that's running here. The whole board is set up. If anyone knows and is watching this, please feel free to chime in. I don't really know how to tell in the feature file how to tell it just to run that specific scenario only. Like right click on it or whatever. You'll see what I'm about to resort to here. This is pretty, I don't remember what I was trying to figure out, but I kind of got exasperated and I said stop, and I actually go in here, you'll see, and delete like everything in the feature file except that one scenario. I would really rather not have to do that every time. I'm sure there's a way. Maybe if I just spent like 5 minutes Googling it, I'd figure it out. But in case I haven't, by the time you see this, either on YouTube or on the post, feel free to chime in the comments. I just haven't encountered that yet. I have been figuring out more and more ways to use this tool. I'm really starting to come to depend pretty heavily on SpecFlow. I'm definitely a fan. Yeah, I think I was still sort of in disbelief that this was the easiest thing to do, but sure enough, here it was. I delete everything, and now I can debug. And I recorded this, I think, last night, the code. So, again, I don't know. Maybe my memory's not that great. I feel like I should remember what the problem was from last night, but I don't. So I'm discovering this in real time with you. Now, that's what I expected. It's returning the right number of castling moves, which begs the question, what's the problem? So I'm getting the right number of moves. Wait a minute. Ah, yes, now I remember. I was getting the right number of moves from the status checker, but this guy was also spitting back one of those moves as well as the second one, so I was getting, it was in the end just doing what it originally did, because the king piece itself is giving me 7, and then I'm getting only 1 from the status checker, but that one, in the union just falls out. It's just part of the 7, so long and short of it, what I figured out was, this is forcing my hand a little quicker than I thought. I thought I'd write a couple of acceptance tests and then integrate the status checker and go green on using that, and instead of this, and then anyway, what I got here is a red test, and I've got a pretty simple way to make it pass. I don't really need to go into the unit level. I'm pretty sure that, and you see me messing around with the source history, I'm pretty sure if I just revert this to the way it was before I started this whole adventure, I'm going to get all green. And I do get green for this test, as you see, but then there's a whole bunch of other ones that go red. Now, this is not troubling to me. I'm expecting this because I wrote, a number of tests to drive out this implementation. So what we're looking at here is a scenario that I created for the Black King that was only created to allow these extra castling moves to be a function of the king piece itself. So what's the solution here? Well, I guess to do this silly thing first, I don't know why I did that, but I think I figure out pretty quickly here that what really needs to happen is, why don't we just delete this test? There's nothing of value in here. So that's one of the 4, and I believe I go here and find another test class that also doesn't need to exist. And this can happen from time to time. One lesson that I'll offer you certainly to take away is, do not fall in love with your unit tests. If you change your approach, and this is especially true at the unit level, it doesn't happen as much at the holistic level. That's where you got to get buy-in from external stakeholders and what there's requirements, at the acceptance test level. The unit test level, there's a lot of things about your design that are going to be involved there. So when you decide to change your approach and change your design, the whole reason you write all these tests is so you can do that without fear. Part of doing that is not getting overly attached to the tests you have. If you use 3 or 4 tests to drive something out, and then you come back later, realize that wasn't the way to go, just delete those tests. Don't overthink it. Don't try to to bang them into shape where they're testing something obtuse or they're duplicating some testing effort. Just it's okay. Delete them. So that answers that. Yes, we can we can remove all the castling logic from the king. Now, when I look at that, it also gives me ideas for maybe a similar approach should be taken with en passant. But if that's going to happen, en passant's like working, so that will be in the product I'll make at the end of all this once the run is kind of over and the YouTube series is wrapped up. So, but what I can also tell you is I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to follow a similar approach here with the upcoming stuff, which is going to involve figuring out check. I don't want to pollute board with that anymore, so I'm probably going to have a separate evaluator for the concept of check. So what I want to do here now is drive out some additional scenarios just to have the documentation of the way the code is working. So I'm going to write a series of tests here, all of which I expect to be green, if memory serves. And this is, like I'm doing this with a client right now. If you have a client that's interested in, client, customer, project manager, whoever it is that's willing and able and interested in reading the gherkin, you can certainly drive your design outside in with acceptance tests. But this is also documentation not for other developers, but for your project stakeholders. So by all means, go in here and show them scenarios that make sense. So I want to make sure there is an element of actual testing to it. I want to make sure it's behaving the way I expect. And it's also an element of proof or demonstration. So look, when I set up a board this way with these two rooks, here are the moves that I'm expecting. There is absolutely nothing wrong, especially in this case with writing tests that you expect to go green. I want to verify and I want to document, and that is, I believe, what almost all of the rest of this episode is. So you'll see these scenarios I'm constructing here, and these should look familiar from driving them out through that castling status checker. I can never remember the name of it. It's probably not a great sign, but castle anyway. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move one of those rooks, and then I'm going to move the rook back to where it started and assert here that that this 3-1 move should not exist. That rook is moved, so we can't use it to castle. And that should go green. And then let's see, what else would I do? I'd probably move the king. See if I have the same taste as myself. Yeah, so demonstrate one that, hey, if we move the king, then we should just have the original set of king moves in this situation. And I think, let's see here. I think there's going to need to be another component added to the castling status checker, and maybe this is what I put on the radar at the end of the episode. So we're not quite out of the woods here yet. This is working in terms of piece movement, but there's a couple scenarios where I believe it is not working. One scenario is that the king shouldn't be able to move through check to castle. That one I may hold off on because I don't yet have the concept of check in the code base. The other one that I think I'll probably wind up tackling in the next episode is the idea that if you start out like with a full board, you can't castle if there's pieces in the way. So the path from the rook in question to the king has to be clear. That strikes me as a fairly straightforward thing to implement. So hopefully I can get that knocked out in episode 55 here. And what I'm envisioning is that that's probably just a matter of, let's see, just inspecting these squares in between those two pieces and making sure that they're all empty. So let's see, that should be, should have exactly the following moves. It should not have 3-1, so it's green there. I'm not sure what I was doing here. Oh, I might have been trying to figure out why it had 7 moves, so at least I got it right. I think I was also, it's getting here toward the end of the episode. There's not much time left. I was kind of figuring out, too, what do I do with this scenario? I can go through and put a pound sign in front of each line individually. That's a real bummer. Sort of labor intensive. Um, yeah, I figured out it was pound after a minute, and then I was like, this is another one of those, this is a theme of the episode, like how much manual labor stupidity am I willing to do before I start researching whether there's a better way. So I got rid of all of that, and then I think I actually pulled a browser window up here and said, like, all right, how do I do this? And was possibly, yeah, I think I was like befuddled by the answer. Safest, I don't remember. My reading on this was it's not possible. It is not supported by Gherkin. So yeah, I highlighted it to prove it to everyone. It's like, okay, I'm good to give up now. So I decided to get a little bit cute and just take this, delete it. So the reason I'm doing this is because I don't commit red tests. That's bad mojo. So what I decided to do was add a card here for what's in progress. This is, I want to continue in this groove. And I actually added the cut text to the Trello card, so I can just rehydrate this test right at the beginning of the next episode, and away we'll go. And then hopefully I can finally put a wrap on this castling thing, at least except for the situations that involve check with the king. So that's a wrap. The only thing remaining here to be done is to actually commit the code and deliver it up to master, and do that shortly. It's nice to have a few of these go relatively smoothly after some rocky patches there in the late 40s, I think it was. So anyway, looking forward to doing it again next time. So thanks for watching as always, and tune in for the next one.